I'm Scott with Marcs Mobility. Today I'm showing you how to install the hardtop canopy on your Pride Mobility scooter, so stay tuned. Here we are with the Pursuit 2. There is a hardtop canopy available for 3 different scooters from Pride Mobility: the Pursuit 2, the PX4, and the Wrangler. I'm going to show you on the Pursuit 2 currently. They are a little different for each of the 3 scooters. This is the only one I have in stock. Be on the lookout for future videos of the other 2 specific for them, but it should be a similar process for the 3 scooters. Keep in mind, if you order the Baja Wrangler and the cover at the same time, so you order the Wrangler and the hardtop cover at checkout at the same time, the Wrangler will already have the hardware installed. That does not apply to the other 2 scooters, or if you already own a Wrangler and you buy one of these, of course you'll have to install the hardware yourself. So now I'm going to go through every step-by-step instructions on how to mount this. There will be timestamps below to help you skip ahead if you need to. We're going to start with the unboxing of everything in here, and we'll go start to finish on how to install this on your Pursuit 2. I'm going to start by cutting these straps. Remember to cut upwards, not down into your box. We're going to take this lid off. Then it's pretty well padded in here. So this should be your plexiglass shield right up top. Then this will be your roof, your hardtop cover roof. I don't want to scratch it, so I'll set it over here. In here we have our, looks like our assembly instructions. And then in the bottom we have this big box here. I assume this is actually our mounting hardware. So I'm going to go ahead and open this and see what we got. Yes, this will be your mounting hardware. So here's, in this box you have all of your screws that you're going to need. And then you have your different brackets that are going to go on the unit. So these are your bars that hold up the canopy. This is one of the mounting brackets. One of the smaller brackets. Looks like we have another box with some screws, or a bag. 2 more of our mounting brackets. Then that should be it. So we got 4 sets of the poles. These are what supports the canopy. And then we've got our hardware. Then we have our brackets. So we have a front bracket and a rear bracket. So now I'm going to take a moment and kind of clean up a little bit. Then I'll show you how to install those brackets on your unit. There is a second box with the canopy set. Mine was on back order for a few days, so it didn't come in with the initial one. That's why you see a wardrobe change from me. But this is the box that has the specific mounting hardware for your scooter. So this one is made for the Pursuit 2. Like I said, there's other hardware for the Wrangler and the PX4. They're going to look a little bit different since this is the Pursuit video. So the other box was your main canopy. This is your hardware for your scooter. So unboxing this. This is our front bracket right here. So this mounts up front, and then your canopy sits in here. Then you have this really wide one, and this one sits in the back. So your 2 canopy supports are going to mount in here. This sits in the back of the unit. Then of course they give you the instruction manual, then a couple plates that kind of cover up the, well, you'll see where these go once I mount them, but these cover up some of the plates that are in the front of the unit. So now let's get started on mounting this into our Pursuit 2. First thing we're going to do is mount the front bracket. What you want to do is grab a Phillips screwdriver, and you're going to remove these 4 Phillips screws, and you're going to take this front plastic piece off. There we go. So with those 4 off, you can take this plastic piece off. Hold on to this in case you ever want to take the canopy off and you want to mount this back on again. Just store this somewhere safe. Now that that's off, we're going to mount the front bracket. So this front bracket has 3 holes in the bottom, then one center hole here. We're going to mount the center hole first. So what we're going to do, you're going to look in your packet of hardware, you're going to have some screws. You got these two long ones and one short one. These are all 13 millimeter. You're not using the long ones, only the short one right now. Then you're also going to need these 3 hex head pan screws that look like this. There's 3 of them in your hardware kit. First thing we're going to do is we're going to get our 13 millimeter, put it through the center hole, and we're going to very loosely start threading it in this threaded hole right in the center. I say very loosely because you only want this to hold it up. That way you can bring it away further. So that's good right there. You might have to loosen it again for the next step. Next, we're going to grab this piece with the 3 threaded holes. It's going to face this direction with the holes on the bottom. And we're going to go behind our main piece here. And you're going to go until those holes line up. So it's going to go behind this piece and behind this metal bracket that's already on your scooter. You're going to line up those holes. I'm going to go ahead and start one. And I'm trying to hand thread these first. Okay, now that my screws are on, I'm going to go back and tighten them all. I'm going to start with the bottom ones. These are hex screws. So I believe this is going to be a 4 millimeter hex head. So I'll go ahead and tighten these. So those 3 are tightened. Now I'm going to go back with my 13 millimeter wrench and tighten this main center bolt. One thing to note, since this is held on by tension, not necessarily any threads on the unit, it can be off kilter, so I would recommend getting a level and just checking and making sure. See, I am off level. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to loosen these just a little bit. Just enough to where I can adjust this. There we go. See how I can wiggle it a little bit now? So I'm just going to try and get it to where it's level. There we go. Now I have it level, so I'm going to go ahead and tighten everything, make sure it stays there. Then I'll tighten my center 13 millimeter bolt again. Now those are nice and tight and we're nice and level. Next thing we're going to do is grab this piece right here. So this is a metal front covering that's meant to go over this bracket. It's right here, and it's basically just going to cover this up. In our bag here we have our 4 screws that they gave us. They gave us 2 long ones and 2 shorter ones. And these are Phillips screws, so I'm going to use the 2 long ones up top. So it's going to mount on like this. Now keep in mind this piece is slightly curved, so you do want to make sure it fits better. See, that way is kind of angling out a little bit. So just make sure the holes line up. So I'm going to try to hand thread. So now I've got all 4 of these screws started. I'm going to go back with my Phillips screwdriver and tighten them in, and then we will be done with the front section. There we go. Now for the rear of the scooter. This is the rear bracket. We're going to have these 2 holes are going to go right in here. They line up like that and then stick outward, and then your canopy mounts back here. First thing we have to do is pop these little plastic pieces off. Go ahead and store those somewhere safe in case you ever decide to not use the canopy anymore. So I'm going to stick these in with the owner's manual. And now this should drop in there. We're going to need those 2 long bolts from earlier and a washer. These are also 13 millimeter. And these are going to go through here. And then they're going to mount in there. So we'll line these up, see if I can get them threaded by hand first. just so they stay in place. So once I've started them by hand, I'm going to grab my 13mm socket and then just go ahead and finish them up. There we go. Once you have all your screws tightened, we're good to go ahead and mount the canopy. One quick note before we move on. This was pretty tough to get down. It took a lot of wrenching, so if you have an impact drill or something, I would recommend that, because there's a lot of threading to get through. And it can be a little tough sometimes too, especially if it doesn't line up exactly correct. Make sure you're not cross-threading, of course, but it did take quite a bit of cranking to get this down. Now we're going to start putting together the canopy. I have the main plexiglass windshield sitting here like this. I've got the protective wrapping down just so you don't scratch it. So what we're going to do first is we're going to mount the roof support. So the roof supports look like this. They're both the same, so it doesn't really matter which one you do, but you are going to do this long side. It's going to go into here like this, facing backwards like that. Don't face it forwards. So whichever way that this is curving, you want this to go back from there. There's also these mounting brackets that provide additional support. It looks like they go on the outside like that. So you'll have this mounted here, and then this providing more support on the side. So I'm going to start with these. We're going to use these 10mm bolts that they give us. And I'm going to run the bolts from the inside. And I'm going to attach this first. But they also give you some washers, so you want to make sure you have your washers on. And we'll go ahead and attach this. Once it's on, we'll do a washer on the other side. And then you've got your 10mm lock nuts as well that we're going to just start threading on the other side. I'm just going to hand thread them for now. We still want this to be able to move a little bit for future adjustments. Once that's on, we're going to mount this extra support beam right here. So we have our 4 more of these. And don't forget our washers. We're going to stick our washers on each bolt. So I'm going to go ahead and push these through. Stick my washers on the other side. And then I'll hand thread my lock nuts. So I'm just doing this so everything stays in place at first. Okay, next step is these on the bottom. We're going to go in from this side. Now this is kind of a rubber stopper here. So you can see underneath, it's going to thread like this. Or it doesn't thread, it just goes through. This rubber stopper didn't line up on mine. I don't know if they just drilled the holes weird. You could drill it out more if you wanted, or just kind of, I'm going to bend it in just a little bit so that I can get these bolts through that hole. But this is just a little bit of padding on the outside. It just lines up a little odd. Same with this back one. So you can see I can kind of force it in and make it work that way. So here's a little bit of a closer view of what it looks like. So I've got these all lined up. I did have to kind of wiggle this around just a little bit. It was a tight fit, but that's why we didn't tighten everything down yet, because we want to make sure it all fits. And I want to make sure these washers are on before we start tightening everything down. So now everything is hand threaded. I'm going to start tightening it now. You can grab a 10mm wrench and get 2 wrenches and start cranking down on it. Or if you have a socket set, that works as well. I'm going to use an impact drill just to save some time. But I recommend a wrench and a socket set. There we go. So I didn't tighten it too much. I don't want it to be super tight just yet, because we might have to loosen these again later to get some adjustments in. But at least now it's secure. I'm going to do the exact same thing to the other side. Just a quick side note, this bracket right here in the future runs of these are going to be pre-installed. So it'll already be attached here. You'll just have to attach it here and here. My instructions showed it with just these two. Of course, I had one of the first runs so I could film this video. So mine was not installed, but I know most future models are going to have this bracket already installed. So next, on the other side of this curb bar, we're going to mount the rear support brackets. I'm going to have a diagram of what this looks like in the corner of the screen, but this is where people might get a little confused. It looks like these just slide into each other. That is not the case. This is actually going to slide right there. They're going to mount like this, side by side. You're not going to slide this in, even though it does fit. Make sure that they are angled inward. You can see on the diagram, this side right here needs to be angled inward towards your scooter. So to mount these, we're going to get our 10mm bolts. These are the 60mm long ones. These are the longer ones. These are longer than the ones we started with. Make sure you get your washer. I'll go ahead and slide it through, and then slide it through the second one. Just like that. Same thing here. Line those up and slide them through. On the other side, just like the others, we're going to get our washers and then our 2 lock nuts. And then I'll go ahead and tighten it up. The manual says to not tighten it too tight for further adjustments, so I'm going to just tighten it with my impact a little bit, just not all the way, but you can see that's secured. Then we will do that to the other side as well, just mirrored. Next step, it's going to be a little hard to see in the camera, but I'm going to try to show you. We've got these foam strips, and what we're going to do is we're going to mount these on the top side of the roof. So our roof is going to sit here. The roof is plastic, and these are to make sure it doesn't make noise. So when it hits, it's not going to hit solid metal. It's just going to hit right here. These, you might have to cut them just a little bit to get them to fit. See how it might cover one of those threaded holes. We are going to need these threaded holes to mount the roof. So there is 8 of them. So we were looking at 4 on each side. So 1 here, 1 between these holes, back here, and back here. So I'm going to go ahead and mount those. Like I said, you might have to cut a little bit off of them just to make sure they land, but we're going to install these next. So the next step, we're going to install this plastic roof. The roof goes on top just like this. We're going to set it on those bars just like that. So I have this balancing kind of on the ground right now, so I can easily do this. One side is curved sharper than the other. That's the rear. That goes back here. The side that's slightly angled is going to be up front. And now if you look down, you want to try to line up these holes. Now because this is very loose, you can move this around quite a bit. So if it doesn't look like it's lining up, I promise it will. But we're going to just kind of move these around, move the canopy around until I see these threaded holes line up. There should be 5 on each side. So those 5 look good. I'll just kind of move this around until I get them where I want. And I can see these 5 as well. From here, we're going to grab our 10 pan head screws. These are a 4mm hex head, and there's 10 of them. So we're going to go through there and then just start threading in to hold the roof down. There's 5 on each side. And then you'll get your 4mm Allen wrench and tighten them down, or I'm going to use an impact drill just to get them all started. Be careful if you're going to use a drill. I just don't want you to strip these or cause any damage. And then once you get those 10 in, you're going to just go ahead and tighten them down. So now we're going to install the canopy. You do have to remove the front basket for it to fit. It will not fit with the front basket on. But this canopy is a little heavy and kind of awkward, so I do recommend a second person for this. So I'm going to bring over Chad. And what we're going to do is we're going to lift this up. The front end is going to set on that bar. The back end is going to rest on these 2 posts in the back. So we're going to lift this. Then I leave some of the screws a little loose just so you can wiggle this around and get them located. But then the back 2 should slide on. Then the front rests up there. Next, we're going to take a moment and mount the rear and the front of the canopy. Now that this is on, we're going to take our 10mm bolts. We'll add our washers, and they're going to go through these 2 holes on the side. Then you'll add your washers on the other side. Grab your lock nut, and then from here, we'll get our wrench and our socket set, and then we will just tighten these up. Then we'll do the same thing on the other side. Next, we're going to mount the front. We've got 3 holes here. You want to make sure that they're lined up with the holes underneath. And now we're going to grab some different bolts. These are 13mm bolts. There's a bag of 3 of them that come with your kit. They are a bit larger than the other ones. There's also a bag of 13mm lock nuts. And we have our larger washers as well. So I'm going to take these 3 bolts and put 3 washers on them. I'm going to go around to the other side so you can see a little better. So we'll stick our washers on. Then we'll go ahead and stick these through. You might have to wiggle this a little bit to get it to line up. And kind of just like earlier, there is some kind of like a plastic or rubber coating on the outside. You might have to lift that up and wiggle it around to get these bolts to go all the way through. So that's what's catching for me. There we go. So you see how I'm lifting this down and pushing those through. And now I can set it down and line it up on those 3 holes. So now I got these 3 bolts through. I'm going to be honest, that was a pretty annoying step. They didn't line up super well getting it through here. I had to get someone else to lift up while I push these through and then hold them in place because they have to go through yet another bracket on the bottom. But now that they're through all the way, and you can kind of feel them underneath poking through, we're going to get our 13mm nuts and then your washers. And you're going to put a washer on underneath. And then you'll do your nuts. Now, sometimes these will barely poke through. It's a very tight fit. So you might not be able to get a washer in the first time. So what I'm going to do, at least this time, because mine's not going all the way through, so I'm going to just barely start this. Then I'm going to get my wrench and socket set and crank it down, and then maybe I could get my washer on a little bit later. There we go. Now I got a lot more room. So now that it's cranked itself down a little more, I can stick my washers on. So that was just to force the bolt to go through, and now I have a lot more room. So I'm going to stick my washer on, stick my bolt on, then tighten that. I did that to the other 2 as well, just because it's such a tight fit, and you're going through 2 layers of metal, 1 layer of this rubber, and then another piece of metal down here, just getting it all lined up. It's easier to just kind of crank it down first. So now that I have it on with all my washers, I'm going to really tighten this, and I'll tighten the other 3 as well. Now that's on nice and secure, I'll attach the other 2 as well. Now for the final part. This is kind of optional, but a lot of people are going to want these. These are your accessory brackets. There's a small one and a large one. They both go in the back here. This is in case if you want to mount like a larger basket. They sell additional accessories for this, like tool clips. Like I said, a basket will slide on here. Certain different accessories that you can get. So in order to mount these, you will need the 40mm Allen screws. They look like this. They have a little Allen hex head. It's a 4mm Allen. So I'll show you how to mount the bottom, and then I'm going to do the top the exact same way. But it's a 4mm Allen, goes in. So first we'll get our washers. And these are our 10mm screws. So I'll stick a washer on. I'm going to do the lower one first. This is the smaller one, so I'm going to stick it through. And then stick this through. We're going to grab 2 more washers. And then our 10mm lock nuts. I'll hand thread those. And I'll do the exact same to the other side so that it's even. Once these are on, we can go ahead and tighten them up. It's a 4mm Allen on one side, 10mm wrench on the other side. And we'll just make sure all 4 of these are tight. It's the exact same process for the larger bar. There's sets of holes going all the way up, so you can mount it wherever you want, either down low or up high. The last thing to mount is your rear view mirror. You're going to get a box with a bag of hardware, your mirror, then these 2 mounting brackets. These mounting brackets are going to go into these threaded screws here. And then in Pride's pictures, they go downward like this. And you want them facing inward. So not, over here on the outside, you want them facing inward. In your bag of hardware, also you want the curve facing that way. In order to mount these, they give you 4 Phillips screws and 4 lock washers. Now, with the lock washers, I assume they go with these. I couldn't get it to thread with the lock washers on. It just wasn't enough room. You should be fine without them, but you can try to get them on. But again, these are just going to thread in here. Because these holes are already threaded, you should be able to hand thread it pretty easily. So I've got that one started. I've got this one going. And then you'll get your screwdriver and then just tighten them up. That's pretty secure. You'll do the same thing to the other side. Now that these brackets are installed, we have our mirror that's going to go here. Then we have these 2 screws that are going to go on the outside and thread into the side of the mirror like this. So you're going to stick these in here. Get your screw. Then I'm going to start threading one side. And then start threading the other side. And once you get it pretty close, you can adjust these. If you want it lower or higher, you can loosen it, bring it higher, lower, change the angle. And once you get it there, you should just be able to hand tighten it with these. And it stays pretty secure too, even through all the bumps. So if you tighten it by hand pretty well, it'll stay secured. So now the canopy is installed, but before we just say that we're done, remember all those nuts and bolts that we had loose so that we could get everything on. Remember to go back and tighten everything, make sure it's all secure all the way through. But this has been how to install the canopy on the Pride Mobility Pursuit 2. I'm going to have more videos on this, so if you want a full review of this, check the link in the description. I'm going to have that out probably shortly after this. I'm also going to have a review on all the different accessories you can mount on the back, show you how to mount those. So that'll be a separate video as well. But this has been how to mount the canopy on the Pride Mobility Pursuit 2. Please like and subscribe. It really helps out our channel. Thank you for watching.
Hi, I'm Marc.
And my name is Alex. We're co-owners of Marcs Mobility.
I started this company in 1995.
We sell many products, not just what you see in this video. If you have any questions or concerns, please call us at the number below at 800-677-6293. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.